Hello, and welcome to another episode of Solipsist Watched. I'm your host, the Social Solipsist, and this week I watched All My Friends Hate Me from 2021. I'm not really sure why I watched this film today. For some reason, it felt like the right thing to do. But this is not what I needed today. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but based on the person who gave me the vague recommendation about it, I should have known a little better what it was likely to be like. So I was slightly surprised, but pleasantly so, I would say, despite my great discomfort. This is a fairly small, low budget British film that got almost no release, I think. It went to Tribeca, but that was about it. And how do I talk about this film without spoiling it? So much of this film is about the tone and the sort of meta commentary going on behind the direct commentary. This is a film about a 30-something guy going to a birthday celebration that his friends are throwing for him. And I kind of don't want to say a whole lot more than that. It is a lot of psychology and sort of a lot of the film is about watching people interact with each other and their actions, their perceptions of each other, and their perceptions of themselves. And it's done generally really, really well. There are some great performances in here. Largely, this is mostly relatively unknown or certainly not star actors. I recognize, I think the majority of the cast from either small roles in movies or TV shows here and there. But nobody of serious note. That said, all of them put on really excellent, subtle performances. And given the content of the movie and how much of it is about reading subtlety, reading, vocal tone, body language, the words behind the words kind of thing, I think everybody puts on an excellent performance in a difficult scenario to perform in. Geez, how do I talk about this film? I don't want to spoil it. And it's not that I think I could tell you what would happen and it would spoil it. It's more about the tone is so sort of fragile that I worry about saying too much and giving you an early perception of what it is, because part of my experience was watching the very beginning of the film and having it slowly evolve into what it becomes. And I don't think I can do that without talking about the tone. So I'm going to sort of give kind of a break here, I think, and say that as deeply uncomfortable as this film made me, I think I really like it, and I think it's really well made. You know what? I can talk about some of the production stuff without talking about the content, and then we'll get to the content stuff. I'll leave a break there. Again, this is fairly low budget. It is set on a limited number of locations. It's like 3 buildings and some outdoor stuff. Um, it really encapsulates tone extremely well. Um, Both sort of the feeling of a dreary English countryside, as well as the emotions and um, the effect of people on a personal perception of a place, and how things that people say and do can make a place feel different rather suddenly. There's some really good cinematography, not like extraordinary, but just really nice overall. It's not flashy, but it makes really good use of framing and light. And there's some quality editing to tie it all together to give just the right amount of space in the dialogue, and in the cutting to project the emotion of the film outward, and really emphasize the direct context that's being addressed. I'm really it's one thing to get a lot of good performances. It's another thing, a lot of good subtle performances. It's another thing to get a lot of good subtle cinematography and editing. And I don't know anything about the writers or director, but hey, good stuff all around. Well written dialogue, well shot film work, and just overall like really solid production. The soundtrack is also very solid. The music is used extremely sparingly. Most of the film has no music. Some sound effect work, which I think adds to the feelings that are being portrayed. But the music is used sparingly and in context where it makes sense. Often it's diegetic. Some of it is non-diegetic, but for the majority of the film, it's just silent. And I think that's a really good choice for the rest of the content. I think overall the locations are very good. I mean, obviously, a lot of that is dependent on the cinematography used to portray them, and I would say it's not quite as good at using its location as compared to something like Knives Out or Thoroughbreds, but it definitely uses it to its advantage, if not quite as strongly as those films. Nonetheless, I'm pretty interested in it and pretty interested in seeing what both the actors and the writer, director, producers are all working on next, because I'm generally pretty impressed with all of this. So I think from here I'm going to talk about the tone and some of the context, and it's, to me, this would constitute spoilers, but I'm not going to actually talk about plot beats. So from here on, I think continue watching at your own discretion. So the film is about social anxiety and trying to find who you are in the context of other people who you haven't seen in a while. And that's difficult at the best of times, I think. That's difficult to portray, it's difficult to film, and it's difficult to grapple with. And the scenario is a little personal and touchy for me as well, but overall, the film was extremely effective. And while I don't put myself in the shoes of the main character, I recognize all of the sensations that he is going through and all of the sort of psychological processes as sort of adjacent to experiences that I have had. The thing I kind of didn't want to say during the first chunk of the film is that this looks like a dark comedy film. And I watched the trailer after the fact because I was curious how this would be framed, similar to something like Thoroughbreds or The Overnight. I think the trailer is very deceptive in terms of tone. It's framed much more comedically. And as far as getting people into the theater, although, again, I don't know, there's almost no information available about this film online. So as far as its production and release history, I really don't know. I think the trailer is, once again, very deceptive in terms of trying to, I hesitate to say make it more palatable, but to reframe elements of the movie as more comedic and more like pop entertainment, if that makes sense, than they actually are. Of the other two that I mentioned as well, this is probably the one that has the most stark contrast between you watch a scene framed in the trailer, and they haven't changed the editing versus something like Thoroughbreds, where the editing is very chopped up, but they haven't changed the editing very much from the actual context within the film, but with like just chopping up the framing, like you don't have the rest of the scene or the prior scene to work off of, and by adding some music, it is amazing how dramatically different the tone can feel. There is one scene in particular that is played off like it's like played off as like a prank in the in the trailer. It's played off like, funny prank, maybe not in the best taste, but funny. And then in the film, it's like, oh no, that's fucking horrifying to watch this happen, because technically the framing is not wrong. It's still that same way, but the context in which it's happening is deeply unfunny. And the way that the joke is played off, recontextualized into the film, makes the like playoff element possibly the most horrifying part of it. This is not a very funny. I don't think this is a funny film at all, really. I don't think this even really qualifies as a dark comedy. I think it's just a straight up like psychological horror movie. And depending on your personal psychology, you may feel that more or less. But the comedic aspects of it, to me, only deepen the horror. They only deepen the sense of dread and sort of the psychological manipulation that's going on. Because we have a film where this gets into one of my kind of few gripes about the film that I might have to, if I can ever stomach watching it again, I might have to reassess. But there are elements of the film that appear to be sort of like an unreliable narrator kind of framing, where you have these sort of semi absurd but still realistic enough events that you could believe that it could either be completely real or it could be an artistic representation of an emotional state, or it could be like full on, psychological breakdown, hallucination kind of thing. And that at no point in the film is ever really resolved. Right up until at no point is it resolved. At the last moment of the film, it's still hitting you with how much of this is real, like how could this be real, basically. What is the extent of our main characters grappling with reality? Nobody acts in a way that is beyond the realm of possibility, but almost all characters have at some point at least a few reactions that are so beyond absurd that if you were in the room, you would with the group, you were a member of the group, you'd probably go, "What the fuck? You can't say that or like do that, or how is this okay? How is this a way to behave?" But that's also like a really strong element of the film. That's sort of the point, is that the main character doesn't really know these people anymore, or maybe he does, but he's reframed them. The friendship that he knew is now different, either literally or contextually, or he's having a breakdown. And at no point does the film really resolve that. And while in a lot of ways I think that's kind of the film's strength, it does, it does make the whole thing a little bit unsatisfying, that it teases you with more. I want it to tease you less with the resolution. There are elements of the film where you think you're going to get a resolution to why has this evolved the way it has? How has it gotten this far? And at the end of the film, it doesn't. It's like, nope, there's a lot of unexplained elements here. It could be explained by being totally in his head, or these people could just be like, everybody just could be really shitty or unaware, or some combination of the two, or this all could not be real at all. So, like, this is very up my alley in terms of, like, as far as horror stuff goes. Like, this is really, the biggest thing I was concerned about going into this was actually that it was going to be more of the sort of cringe comedy, cringe humor, sort of awkward humor stuff, and it pretty reasonably quickly dispels that as like, no, we're going harder than that. This isn't a joke. But at the end, I was so uncomfortable that I hesitate to say like, oh, this is my thing, because I hate watching this film, even though it's really good. I think that's the best way I can describe it. As far as like studying a character's internal psychology and horror that doesn't rely on cheap tricks or other weird like garbage to sort of stretch it out or make it more horrifying, like, this is a deeply horrific film to me. And it does that without like doing anything remotely outrageous. Uh, so yeah, I mean, it's really strong, and I'm happy that I watched it. No, I'm not. I'm not happy that I watched it. I'm. It's a really good film, and if you've gotten this far and haven't watched it, but it sounds like it's up your alley, please do, because it deserves some support. But, it's hard. It's hard to watch. Um, I'm sure I could ramble on more, but I don't want to spoil anymore, and I feel like I've already given it enough context that I may have given you too much information. Anyway, thank you guys for watching another episode of Solipsist Watched. I've been the Social Solipsist, and I'll see you guys next time.